well, to start off, it's not so much what I've missed a couple here, which I'm sure maybe some of you guys have maybe missed a few as well. But the beauty of what the course has done for me, it's just opened up a dialogue to get to know other guys. I think that's been, there's great content out there in many different areas, but just to be able to have real discussions with other guys, it's super encouraging. I want to know what's going on in John's life. We can pray, Craig's life, Matt's life, all that kind of stuff. And we can only do that by hanging out and spending some time together. So as good as the course has been, and well done for selecting this, John, and all that kind of stuff, I've just really enjoyed chatting to the guys that I've chatted to, because therein lies the art of discipleship, spending some time with guys. Without that, it's theory. This thing has to move into the practical. So John definitely got first dibs of choosing Peter. I think I got last dibs by the time the list came to me. But I think I would have chosen kind of Paul anyway. Hey, that's apparently an image of Paul, probably some famous thing that some art people. It looks to me like he's actually having a selfie, but I think it's a book. I have been told by reliable witnesses that, on good authority, that they had no cell phones back there. It was a book, indeed. Okay, so we're going to be looking at Paul and the principle of a life of surrender. And that's something that I think is a beautiful thing to think about. And in the discussion time, we'll hopefully dive into that. But I'm also tasked with doing a little bit of a summary, because I don't know how many of you have been here every single week. There's probably not too many. Okay, Brad, well done. Namesake, Brad. I want to just go through the 10 characters that we've learned from. The question I want you guys to ask is, who do you see yourself in? Because I think we've all got a journey here. There would be there's definitely an 11th character. That's Jesus himself. I think that's quite a cool guy to kind of model yourself on. But there's also our own story. And there might be elements of these guys here. So the first one was that faith journey of Abraham, and God makes men by showing us that we can trust him through impossible circumstances. Some of you are going through impossible circumstances right now, and God has got a track record. It's not so much about your faith. It's about the fact that he is faithful, and that we can place our trust in something that's faithful, as opposed to things that aren't super full of faith. Then we did the perseverance of Joseph. God makes men by orchestrating even the toughest circumstances for the greater good. Only God can do that. I've witnessed some hectic things up and close, but only God, nothing else, no other force on this planet can take things that are bad and transform them into things that are good. Only God can do that. That's something that's innate in his creativity that nothing else can come close to doing. Then we did the transformation of Moses. God makes men by taking us through a humbling process that fundamentally changes the way we think. He had a massive long journey, 40 years here, 40 years there, and just changed the way that man thought. And it was a beautiful transformation. That's a word that I love. If we can let Jesus transform us, we're most of the way there. Hey? Then we did the courage of Gideon, and that focus on his strength. God makes men by turning our weaknesses into strength so that only he can get the glory. I mean, it's also uniquely God. He kind of like, listen, don't give me the top of the class. Let me show you what a good teacher I am. Give me the bottom of the class, and I'll teach that guy. He's kind of amazing at how he does that. Then we learned about discipline through the heart of David. God makes men by doing whatever it takes to correct and restore us when we go astray. Beautiful story that God is both love and justice, and only he can do those can do both of those arcs at the same time. Then we learned about the wisdom of Solomon. God makes men by making it impossible for us to find lasting happiness in any other pursuit apart from him. You don't kind of think the Bible kind of speaks on happiness too much, but and I think a lot of us would be able to testify. We've done things before, we've tried things before, and they actually don't give you that depth of meaning. That's a gift from Jesus, going like, that's cool, I made that, that's a good thing, but it's not the main thing. The main thing is me. Okay. Then we did the zeal of Nehemiah, the calling. I've just gone through that book, amazing. God makes men by turning what breaks our hearts into a passionate calling to help redeem some broken part of his world. Inside each one of you, there's gold, regardless of whether you are 20 or 70, there's gold inside of you. And how amazing that God can place in you a passion that can be outworked in the real application of the gospel. I think that's beautiful. It's an awesome book. Yeah. Then we did the integrity of Job. Lots of suffering involved in that one as well. God makes men by allowing us to gain through suffering what we could gain no other way. Sometimes the hard way is the best way. We want to go towards the easy route. God's like, that's not how I want you to develop. You have to get strength first, and sometimes that's through suffering. Then we just did the boldness of Peter, the discipleship process. God makes men by a process of calling, equipping, and sending us so that we can call, equip, and send others. Lovely reciprocal process that takes place. We spoke about, I think it's 2 Timothy, just on the life cycle of a disciple. We think like, cool, we've done our job when you've discipled someone, which is, you've definitely done a good thing, of course. But the way that it's written in 2 Timothy, it's about the process of your disciple then discipling someone else who discipled someone else. That's like the actual life cycle. I've heard a story of a professor once who taught his class this topic, and then he instructed them in the beginning to teach someone else on the class. And then when it came time for the exam, he said, listen, don't you arrive for the exam, send the person that you taught. That'll determine whether you have been a good student or not. It's a good story, that. Okay, and now we're going to maybe spend a few minutes just talking about Paul. And there's also an element of his surrender there, but the main thrust of the book was the passion of Paul. Okay, and the principle is God makes men by forging us into humble servants who are increasingly surrendered to the lordship of Jesus. Okay, humble servants. The kind of why I identify with Paul quite a lot is, I think if I take myself back into that time period, I think I would have been maybe I'm like some of you guys, maybe not. I think I would have been quite a good Pharisee. I've definitely got the ability to have been quite a pious Pharisee. I would have had a lacquer, prayer shawl. We want to do, you can put on a show to do the right thing. That is like, just do the right thing. I've always got that, like Greg's spoken before about some people have a justice arc. Like when you see someone not do the right thing, my blood boils like straight away. But if we're honest here, we all want justice for other people, but we all want mercy for ourselves. Like that's true. Like if you go through a robot that's between amber and red, it's like, no, I'm in a hurry. If someone else does it, you're like, inconsiderate, thinks they're more important than me. And yet that's the problem that we have as humans. Okay? And Paul had that passion even when he was a Pharisee. So I find that quite beautiful that God chose him, because he had something there that was God-given, but it was just aimed in the wrong direction. So God doesn't want to necessarily change 100% of you. He's given you something. He wants to point what he's already given you and allow that to be refined and made more kingdom-centric. Okay? So I actually want this to be a little bit interactive. I know it's not a small group here, but you guys can just shout out a few things. But what comes to mind when you think of Paul? Like, just give me a few things that come to mind. Like, what if someone asks you, tell me about Paul? What words are you throwing out? Blinding lights. Cool. I like it. Knocked off his horse, donkey. Cool. Establishing. Apostolic. Yeah. Time in prison. Yeah. This oak is like the Bear Grylls of like the Bible to me. Hey? Lots of adventure, hey? He was snake bitten here, whipped there. This oak starting riots here. This oak was next level. And we probably, yeah. The word probably got out about him, and yet he always had that passion from the beginning. We probably know more about Paul, besides Jesus. We know more about Paul than probably anyone else in the New Testament. By books, he clearly outstripped everyone. It's just only Luke is more prolific in volume, but we know a lot about Paul, and yet he met Jesus through that blinding light. But if someone had to ask me, what do you remember about Paul? It's that first time we meet him, the Bible talks about him breathing out murderous threats against the members of the way. Like that's a hectic introduction. Hey? Passion, but points it in the wrong direction. And I've been that in my life. I've definitely had passion, but definitely been pointed in the wrong direction. Paul started off as an enemy. Jeepers, miles behind you. There's a clicker here, guys. Sheesh, help a brother out here. Huh? I'm like, hey, this is good working. I'm on the slide here. Okay, so Paul started off as an enemy of the way. As our first introduction to him is this guy was gangster. He thought he was doing the right thing, okay? But the foundation of Paul's passion, I think, was that he understood grace. So he had that blinding light. He got knocked off. But that passion got repurposed. And there he was declaring war for a God, and he found out that he was actually declaring war on God. And I think in his own mind, as being a Pharisee, he would have been like, that deserves this outcome. But he didn't get that outcome. So there's so many verses. I decided to actually not include them because it was just go and read the book, guys. There's so many verses there which show you his zeal and his passion. But I think he never really got over grace because he was breathing that from the word, from his very first vision of encounter with Jesus, because he realized that he received what he didn't deserve, and that gap between who he thought God was and who he knew himself to be was massive. And as he journeyed, that gap became bigger. So in the book, they actually talk about this. The author called it the ore gap. It's the widening gap between your understanding of who God is and who you are. Okay, so when you become a Christian, there's definitely in the beginning of whatever. Sometimes it's a blinding light. Other times it's this slow kind of meander. We all have different stories. But when you start this journey with Jesus, there's an awareness of who God is that maybe you didn't have. Okay, but there's also becomes awareness of who you are, and the author kind of speaks about as we mature, we start to go wider and wider. Like you get a bigger picture of who God is. Okay, it's not that you see yourself less, okay, but you see God bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets to the point where you have depth, and that ore gap is what actually empowers us to live that life. Like in the beginning, you might come across some of those verses, like whoever wants to follow me, pick up his cross daily. You're like, okay, maybe I just skip that one. I'm going to read a psalm quickly. Like just, it's deep. But as that ore gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then you start to understand and you want to live by those harder verses. There's the invitation into surrender. And that's something that Paul did straight away. That was beautiful. I wish we had like some kind of machine that could tell us how much we surrendered, because Paul had when he had that encounter, it was quite a big surrender quite quickly. Whereas us, sometimes it's a step in, and that's also fine. It's a process. That's really cool. But I would love for my life to get to a place where I'm more and more surrendered. There's a beautiful story that I want to just chat about, and I think this will be kind of where I want to hang around for a little bit. Is in the book, there's a story about a famous Baptist missionary, and he went around doing what they do, and he had an interpreter. So he was doing this massive crusade, and this interpreter was interpreting, and eventually the guy asked him, well, I don't know too much about you. What do you think about us American Christians? And the guy's like, nah, you're not going to like my answer. I'd rather not. Okay. And then this made him quite curious. So as he kept on preaching, he said, no, what do you mean? Give me some honest feedback here. What do you think about American Christianity? And this guy's response centered around his understanding of, so he said basically in the 1960s, you guys, the Americans, evangelists, started using the word commitment. We've made a commitment to Jesus, a commitment. And he said, when you start to use a word in favor of another word, the other word stops being used. So he said, you guys used to use surrender, and now you use commitment. Okay, and I thought this was quite profound. So by using the word commitment, he understood that to be saying, listen, guys, you're holding on to something. Like we've all got commitments in our life. There might be a bill or whatever, but sometimes that commitment isn't met. It's on your terms. I'm committed to you until I'm not. I'm committed to you until it gets tight. So that word almost waters down maybe the process. And I'm not saying that's what was meant, but that's what sometimes happens in communication. This guy was saying, listen, when you meet Jesus and you get to the position of 100% surrender, that's totally different. Like in a war, if you surrender, you realize you've got no rights. It's done. If you become a slave, the Bible uses that language quite a lot. If you totally surrender, you actually have forsaken all your rights, and when you are fully surrendered, that's when you become that humble servant. And the humble servant, even though we called co-heirs and sons, okay, there's something different that bond slave does, which is because he's fully surrendered. He's not living like someone who can float in and out of a relationship. So I thought that was quite profound. When I read that chapter over and over again, that was the thing that hit me the most. How much of my life have I surrendered? And why do I think that is a process? I know there is elements of it being a process, but I'm saying, how have I, okay, God, you allowed into this room in my heart, my mind, but I'm going to keep this one closed. And maybe if it goes well, then I'll let you come into this one. Whereas I think maybe a more correct way is like, Jesus, I'm surrendered here. Teach me how to be surrendered. Like, I want you to come invade all of me, and I want to be used by you, and I want to become a humble servant. And by doing so, you can forge me into the person that I want to be. I do think in our discussion time, I think that's something that we can definitely center around. Is like, hey guys, did you make a commitment? Have you surrendered? Tell me about that. Tell me about the understanding of that concept in your mind. And then I also just wanted to reiterate again that 12th kind of character, because this book was written on 10 men. Yes, I know there were 10 men from the Bible, but they were 10 men. And if someone was going to be writing us a chapter on us, what would that chapter be about? And if you knew that, would you be happy with that, with the chapter that's being written on you? Because just in the last month, and it's a good place to be, is just that place when you really, really, really know that you need God. You really, really know that you need Jesus. That's a good place to be. That is a place that speaks of surrender. And sometimes I think the world will tell us, listen, you've got your ducks in a row. You need a little bit of Jesus. You need just a little bit of morality. Get to church a little bit, and you're fine. And it's actually quite a dangerous place to be in. I would much rather be totally surrendered, or at least aiming in that direction. Like, Jesus, I want to be totally surrendered. Teach me, show me. And it's another point on community is we've all got those blind spots. And I just love this discussion because it's opening up the pathways that we can have cool discussions. Because I know there are probably things on each of our hearts that we really could have a deep chat about. And a format like this, I think, is just the beginning. About getting around with 2 or 3 guys and just having a chat, like, what's going on in your life? Like, what can we pray for? Where do you think that surrender is not being applied in your life? It's not a down session. It's actually very encouraging, because the guys around you, I think, will rally around you, and I think that's what discipleship is really about. Because we can, as we discussed, you can only really disciple once you have been discipled. And I do think that's been if I look at the churches that at least that I've been a part of, if I had to do a survey right now, like how many of you were discipled really well, I think you'd all be quite surprised at how few hands would go up. And if you haven't been discipled, then it's quite hard to disciple. It's not, but I love the way that John ended off there, is we can do this, and we must do this. So, and I think because God doesn't work with perfection, he works with us. I think he's so gracious to go like, listen, my son, I know maybe that pathway plan that I had for you wasn't done well in terms of other people discipling you, but I can make you into someone who can disciple someone very, 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 very smoothly. Trust me, I will guide you through that process. Okay, so we're gonna throw up our last little segment of questions. And yeah, guys, just circle back to that one there if it's not on there as a question, okay? Because I do think I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on surrender versus commitment. I think that's a cool one. Okay, let's have some questions. Thank you.